Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. You know, what's going on in the real estate market, and particularly in regards to, is COVID-19 going to change the way that we live and how we want to live? I thought it would be really helpful to check back in with Hunter Milborne, who runs his own consulting company that consults with builders and people in regards to the type of places that we want to live in. And Hunter Milborne, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Thanks, Brian. Very good. Very good. Thank you.
So you had checked in with me a couple of months ago and told me about some of the work that Hunter Milborne does, and I appreciate that. I wonder if you could give me a sense, you know, what's happened in the last couple of months with COVID-19. Is your business still going strong? The real estate market is up, but my sense is it's mainly people leaving condos, going into suburban homes. What are you seeing?
Well, you know, our business is really a very, very narrowly focused kind of business to business brand. So developers will hire us, excuse me, to help us plan a pre-construction condominium project and then execute the marketing and sales program. So you know, in the GTA, there's probably in a slow year maybe 20,000 sales, and in a busy year maybe 35,000 pre-construction sales. So not including resales. So what happens in the market today, and I think over the last 6 months, year, there's been a lot of people that have, particularly downtown, that were in smaller suites that decided that, hey, I don't have to be walking to my office at King and Bay. I can work from home. So there were a lot of those smaller units, bachelors and one bedrooms, that went on the market. And there was an exodus, you know, whether someone bought a home in Whitby or Pickering or Hamilton or whatever, you know, the physical proximity wasn't quite as critical. And
size became something they wanted more of because they were living there more hours of a day, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, typically, you know, downtown, the prices were most expensive. And, you know, that for this, you know, for similar amount of money, I know around the end of November, there was almost 200 units, bachelors and one bedrooms, on the market in CO1, which is the Trev district downtown. So it looked like there was a real glut of supply that looked like it could take months and months and months to eat up that supply. But curiously enough, and it just shows the strength of the market today, by the end of January, middle of February, not only were those units all sold under 500,000, there was hardly anything available under 600,000. So it looked, you know, whether it was users or investors, they just saw an opportunity, and a lot of those units sold.
And I'd heard that prices were down like 20-25%. Is that the case?
Well, I think the rents were down. I think the rental prices were down.
But not the condo sale prices.
No, the sale prices were probably off a little bit, maybe 5 to 10% downtown. You know, in the pre-construction market, where we're selling today for delivery 3, 4, or 5 years from now, prices are up, you know, from year over year, and the volumes are strong. The one thing that's happened over the last 3 to 6 months, and even in this year so far, calendar 2021, I mean, the two sales launches that we did this year so far, one was in Bowmanville and one was in Hamilton. So there's been a little bit more activity in 905 than 416. But the Bowmanville one, it's 307 suites right next door to the GO train station. You know, we sold since the middle of January about 240 out of 307. And the Hamilton one, which is downtown Hamilton, is 350 odd units, and it's 100% sold in the first month. So it's pretty strong.
In Hamilton.
Yeah.
Is it near transit as well?
Yeah, it's near transit. But I mean, I think the transit became less important than just affordable end prices.
So condos, I guess it was what you're saying, is still a very strong market, even though what I've been hearing is people are leaving condos to go to suburban homes. You're saying no, they're still strong.
Listen, I think that what you're hearing is accurate. I think that over the last 3 months, 6 months, 9 months since COVID came, that people realized that they didn't need to be in a certain location. And a lot of those people sold their units because the rents were down and moved to more of a suburban type of either outer 416 or 905. But I think that the thing that we noticed was that the resilience of the market is that, like, there's not a lot of vacant units. I mean, those units that were put up for sale or that people moved out of have resold. And, you know, that market downtown has really strengthened a lot, particularly since the end of November.
Now, I had understood that a bunch of those homes, those condos, were being sold to investors that then either rented them out or put them on Airbnb or something like that. The rental market, you say, is down. Airbnb is like just non-existent with lack of travel. So what are they doing? Who's buying them now?
Yeah, listen, I think it's hard to know exactly, but I think that a lot of people looked and said, gee, if these affordable units are available downtown and they're under $500,000, under $550,000, I may not get a chance to buy that. So whether it was a user, everybody's an investor. A user buyer buys to live in and wants things to go up, and an investor is going to buy to rent out. So just because rents are down doesn't mean something won't rent. It might take a little bit longer. It might be a little bit lower, but there's still strong demand. So I think the downtown submarket was probably the weakest market, and it's really rebounded quite strongly in the last 3-4 months.
I was driving by Vaughan the other day and like shocked that there's towers as tall as you'd expect in downtown Toronto that are up, and they're all lit up. So I guess they're all occupied. What's happening in the 905?
Yeah, and 905, particularly the transit-oriented ones, around that end of the subway stop or the GO train stations. If something is transit-based, it's very popular. So, and again, in 905, whether it's Hamilton or Bowmanville or Vaughan, it's just more affordable. So someone's going to get more space for the money. If you take just a general average, downtown prices could range from, let's say, $1,200 to $1,500 a square foot. And 905, the stuff in Hamilton or Bowmanville or north of the city might be $700 to $800 per square foot. So not quite half, but almost, right?
Yeah,
so you get twice as much space.
Significant discount to be in the suburbs. We're talking to Hunter Milborne today, a consultant in the condo business from a marketing standpoint. We're going to take a break and come back with more with Hunter in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Hunter Milborne, who runs a consulting company that consults with condo developers on what type of condos they should be building. Hunter, give me a sense. What kind of amenities, what sizes, what shapes? Are you advising people put home offices in condos these days? What's going on? How are you advising people?
Yeah, listen, the developers will retain us 3 months, 6 months, a year and a half before the building is going to be scheduled to go to the market. And really the most important thing is the suite mix and the suite sizes. Because if you get the sizes right, then we'll get the prices right. And, the amenities are changing a little bit. We're getting, less big pools and expensive type amenities to operate, more co-working spaces, more emphasis on a gym. But the most important thing is I would say, the neighborhood that it's in, proximity to transit, and the sizes of the suites. And I think that there's a trend, which you might think is a little bit counterintuitive, for suites that are on the smaller side, just as even in the 905 area, because as the prices go up, as the prices per square foot, as land gets more expensive, as construction costs get more expensive, the way that these homes stay affordable is by staying in a very efficiently designed and good sizing.
Really? So I would have thought that people were going to be wanting larger because they're spending, all day and living and working in their place of residence. And you're saying, no, they're going smaller.
Listen, what people want and what people can afford are often two different things, So you're totally right in terms of what they want, and they're generally much larger than they would be downtown, but or a broader range. But the thing is that in order for people to buy them, whether it's a user or whether it's an investor, they have to be able to afford that end price. So even if it's $800 or $900 a square foot, if you think every 100 square feet is $80,000 or $90,000. It also adds on more property taxes and more common expenses. So there's really a very important drive to keep those layouts as small and efficient as possible.
So for a bachelor, a 1 bedroom or a 2 bedroom, what kind of sizes are you seeing in square footage?
Very, very few bachelors are getting designed in today, but I think if a bachelor was to be created, it would probably be in the 350 to 400 square feet range. Or one bedrooms, one bedrooms are typically on average, they could range anywhere from 450 to about 600. When you get over 550, you're probably going to end up with a den, and closer to 600, maybe it could be a one bedroom and den with 2 baths, because you've got a room that can sort of serve as a guest room sometimes.
And then you're saying the suite mix. In a typical condo, do you have some 3 bedrooms, or no, they're all 2 or 1?
Yeah, you'd have 3, but you'd have, your 2 bedrooms might be in the 700-800 square foot range, and the 3 bedrooms maybe, 800 to 900 square feet. So it's kind of like a bell curve. So you've got your studios at one end, which is a small percentage, increasing through 1 bedrooms and 1 bedroom and dens and 2s, and then as you get to your 2 bedroom and dens and 3 bedrooms, those percentages would taper off. But you'd end up with a broad suite mix. But like your old fashioned bell curve, you've got most of the product in the middle. Huh?
Yeah, I saw on Facebook, I think it was a 4,000 square foot condo with their own pool advertised. So that's got to be at one far end of your bell curve.
Yeah, I mean, we have a project that we're marketing now, just to say that not everything is small. It's in Rosedale, and it was 5 years to get the project approved. It's a 4-story building. It's on Dale Avenue. So the address of the building, it's 7 Dale. It's actually 2 little buildings. One building is 12 units and one is 14. So it's 26 homes altogether. And they range in size from over 2,000 square feet to over 5,000 square feet. And they're priced essentially between $5 and $10 million each. So it's under construction and occupying in the fall of 2022. It's about 25% sold. So, that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. So you've got
people are paying between $5 and $10 million for a condo.
But in Rosedale, where your houses are, the same or more. Right?
Unbelievable.
Okay, they have 10-foot ceilings. They have Italian kitchens. They're basically, and it's funny, of the 5 or 6 or 7 people that have purchased so far, nobody really upgraded anything because there was really nothing to upgrade. Everything was pretty much as nice as you could get.
Are 10-foot ceilings standard now?
Well, in a luxury product like that, I mean, typically most buildings today are 9. They would do 9-foot ceilings. Maybe a penthouse might be 10.
Okay, and one bathroom for every bedroom.
Typically, yeah.
But not en suite. Only en suite for the master.
It depends on the suite. I mean, you if you have a 1 bedroom with a master en suite and then a 2nd bedroom, your bathroom, they'd usually keep it open so that it could serve as a powder room as well. So it's
right.
Not an en suite.
Okay. And what about balconies? What's happening? Because I've seen, again, a lot that have got surprisingly large terraces. And then on the other side, you see these, what are they called, Parisian or whatever, that aren't even balconies at all.
Yeah, there's a little concept called a Juliet balcony where if a developer is, if it's a tight site and you build right up to the property line and you can't project that balcony, then you've got a big set of sliding doors that would open and then just a railing at the front. So it's more or less referred to as a Juliet balcony. But a lot of the buildings today that are happening, I mean, if you're in the core or at a subway station, as you mentioned, in Vaughan, you can have these, towers that go straight up. But a lot of buildings today, there's buildings we're selling along Kingston Road. There's one called Manderley. There's one called Perch. They're 8-10 stories. So they angular plane back into the neighborhood. So they terrace back. So what happens is you end up with suites that have a lot of outdoor space.
And, those outdoor terraces and patios are usable only for a couple of months a year, but really are attractive amenities, are they not?
Yeah, I mean, they're very desirable because, people, even though it's a limited season, just the ability to be able to get outside in your own private space is important.
Yeah. Okay. And then you mentioned something about WeWork or shared work or common area space. I would have thought people want to stay away from other people with COVID-19 and wouldn't want to work together downstairs in a common room.
Well, that was a trend that started kind of before COVID. And I think that, but even in today's world with people at home, if they've got a pet or if they've got a kid, people respect their social distancing. So those common area workspaces are important for people because it gives them a chance to go to kind of a semi-office environment where they're, not going to have a cat walk past the Zoom's call or the dog start barking or the kid starts crying in the background.
Right. Okay. So you think that that's something that's an amenity people want?
Yeah. I mean, normally when we do the amenities in a building, whether it's 3,000 square feet or 5,000 or 8,000 or 10,000, depending on the side of the building, I mean, the gym is probably the single most important thing. Then a multi-purpose room where it could be a function room for a party or a wedding or whatever, and then that common area, that multi-purpose room that could be a shared facility for workspace is very important, right near the top of the list.
But pools are out.
Yeah, I mean, there's still buildings that get, but not as many. I mean, I can think of the 15 or 20 buildings that we've got in the planning stages now, and I can't think of one that has a pool, even if it has 200, 300, 400 suites.
Really? And then, if you're downtown, what kind of amenities do you have in the same structure? Do you put restaurants? Do you put fitness centers? Is that attractive to people? I think about the Bisha Hotel or the Thompson Hotel. You've got combinations of hotels and condos. What are you recommending there?
Yeah, I mean, Bisha was a project that we sold many years ago. I think we sold it around 2010, 11. It got delivered about 3 or 4 years later. So, you have the hotel, you have the residences, and it was very popular. So you've got some restaurants right on site. But when you're in a higher dense area, you might have some ground floor retail or second floor, but you've got all these other amenities. And again, restaurants today are closed, but hopefully in the not too distant future, they'll reopen. So the ability to have those area amenities is very important.
So when you've got restaurants or hotels associated with the same condo building, do the condos sell at a premium?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, Bisha, there was 4 or 5 projects on the market in that neighborhood. And I would say on average, it probably sold for, 12 or 15% more than the neighboring buildings, just because of the hotel and the perceived higher end value because of the amenities.
And what happens there? Do you separate out the hotel entrance from the residential entrance?
Yeah, it's totally separate. So you could be a resident owner and come in and out of your building and never go into the hotel, but there's an access point where you can go from the residence to the hotel, but not the other way around.
Do you give the better views to the hotel or to the residents?
Always to the residents. Right?
Always to the residents. So the hotel gets what? The lower end views.
It's typically the lower floors. Yeah, but in Bisha, for example, you've got the hotel at the bottom and you've got the residents in the mean. But on the penthouse floors, there's some common area space that is devoted to the hotel that residents can use as well.
Right. Oh, well, that makes sense. You can share the common area. You can either be for the residents or for the hotel.
Yeah. Like when we sold the Four Seasons here a few years ago. It was about 12 or 13 years ago now. So it was in Yorkville at Bay and Yorkville, about 200 residences and 2 towers, and there all the amenities like the swimming pool, the gym, and everything is basically shared between the residences and the hotel.
Do the residential customers want that? Do they want to share a pool with a hotel?
Well, as it turns out, that was the way it started out. But it's not everyone's cup of tea. In some buildings they'll totally separate the residential and hotel amenities, but in others they're combined. So that was the way that one ended up. So some people really like it, and others have preferred to sell and move to somewhere else.
I've seen some of these towers that are like almost 100 stories high and really thin buildings. With COVID and long elevator rides, does that make sense?
Oh, listen, I think in this world, I mean, the buildings that we sold over the years, there were buildings that were 40, 50, 60 floors. And, there's a few that are taller. And you're right. I mean, it's a time issue, and it's in COVID, it's not an ideal situation. So what we found in the last, 6 to 9 months, that there's been a little bit more demand for smaller buildings, 150 units, 200 units, 15 stories, 20 stories, just more boutique buildings as opposed to the much bigger ones.
Yeah, this, I think it's Pinnacle's developing something, One Young Street, that is supposedly one of the tallest residential buildings in the country. But it's pretty thin. How many, like
Yeah.
if you're saying 200 to 300 rooms, how many rooms would be in, how many units would be in that size of a building?
Yeah, I'm guessing it could be 400, 450. It could be quite a lot, right?
Even though
Because
it's
typically on a floor like that, you'd probably have somewhere between 8, depending on the size of the tower, you could have 8 or 10 suites per floor.
right, because it's so thin. Okay.
Yeah.
I've also seen, a huge amount of development everyone has along the waterfront, both Queens Quay as well as Humber Bay and other places. Do you think that's a trend that's going to continue?
Yeah, I think the Humber Bay piece is just about all built out. I mean, we sold many buildings along there over the last 10 or 15 years, originally for Monarch and then ultimately Mattamy. And now they're just finishing off the last few buildings. On the inner waterfront, there's still a little bit of room. I mean, one of the projects we have on the market there is by Greenland, which is a large international company called Lakeside. And it's around Sherburne and Lakeshore. But I think what's happening now is you're going to see, we have a project opening in a month or so on the Whitby Harbor. We have stuff coming in Mississauga and Burlington and Hamilton on the waterfront. So I think you're going to just see that waterfront disperse again, just because of availability of land and affordability.
That Mr. Christie's site is, I think, something like 25 acres, and they're trying to get a GO train station right there at Park Lawn and the QEW. And it's not on the water, but it's on the other side of Lakeshore from the water.
So that's a great site, and if if it ends up with a GO train station, that'll be, I think it's mixed use. I think it was employment land, so it's probably going to be a lot of commercial space and some residential.
And what kind of stuff do you see happening in Mississauga?
We sold a building there last summer. It opened in July. This was, when things were just opening up a little bit. It was called Westport, and it was right across the street from the Port Credit GO station. And it was 359 units, about a $225 million sellout. And by the end of October, it was 100% sold before the construction even started.
Oh my gosh.
We launched another one in August called Artform, which was at Here Ontario in Dundas. And it's about 90% sold today. And there's a second phase that's going to open for that probably towards the end of May. So, and there's other buildings.
Here Ontario and Dundas is not the best corner.
In Mississauga, right. But it's actually, they're doing a new LRT that's going right from Lakeshore all the way up Here Ontario to Steeles and Highway 7, so almost to Brampton. So it's going to be a little bit of an equal, because usually Port Credit has been great, Square One was great, some of the stuff in between wasn't as great. But what happens there is that, that Port Credit location was probably, 10% more expensive than the Here Ontario and Dundas one. So a lot of people said, hey, I can go there and get more space. And, as the markets change, there's two schools of thought. One is it's not as good today, but two is that as time goes by, because it's starting from a lower base, it has more room to appreciate. So, there's something for everyone.
I see a lot of these places being sold with something called a Walkability Index. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of there's a transit score and a walk score. And it's like the wine, how you get points for the nice wine, right? So again, I'm not a wineophile or exactly how that works, but if you have a very high walk score and a very high transit score, there's one statistic, and I think it was that in the last 10 years, about 40% of the new multifamily condominium development happened within 500 meters of a subway station or a GO train station.
Sorry, that's interesting. Can you repeat that?
So about 40% of all new condominium development over the last 10 years was within 500 meters of a GO train or a subway station.
That says transit's critically important to the people that live in condos.
Yeah, no? Yeah. And what happened? The municipalities and those areas around the transit typically have the biggest densities.
Yeah. Well, and they want the transit, and then they justify the transit. So it's a virtuous circle.
Yeah.
Okay, and walkability has got to be something to do with commercial establishments, restaurants, coffee shops, parks, and other stuff nearby.
Yeah, that's why Port Credit was always very popular, and by downtown's been popular. I mean, I think that the whole COVID business has sort of distorted the way the world has worked. But hopefully, as people start to get vaccinated and as the weather starts getting better, I mean, I don't think by the summer or by September things will be totally back to normal, but hopefully well on the way.
So do you think COVID changes the way we live, or no, we're going to go back to where we were in 2019?
I think it has changed. I mean, there's been a real decentralization of people out towards 905. And I think that, there'll be kind of a reversion to the mean as things go back to normal. I think, downtown will rebound as it already has started to. But I think, some of those trends will stay, that in terms of people will work from home. It's a little more acceptable now for employers and for staff. So I think those trends will continue. I mean, it's probably going to affect the office and retail markets more than the residential markets. But I think some of those trends will abate and some of them will stay in place,
But if it impacts the office, and I've heard lots of stories about, big companies that are downsizing their downtown office commitments. If it impacts the office, why wouldn't it impact the residential? Because as you said earlier in our conversation, if people don't need to live close to King and Bay, because their offices, aren't demanding they come in all the time, why live close to King and Bay?
Listen, that's a good question. And I think a lot of it is depending on, the age of, if you have a big millennial population that really wants to be, in a King West type of neighborhood or in a downtown East neighborhood, there's still lots of buildings. There was a building that came on the market fairly recently at Yonge and Wellesley. And it was one of the first big ones that came out this year. And I'm told that it did exceptionally well. It was all the things, it was a tall building, 600 suites, 40, 50 floors. And all of a sudden, in 60 or 90 days, it's 50% sold, right?
Fascinating business that you're in. We're going to take a break and come back more with Hunter Milborne in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're talking about condos and condo development and what's happening, what people want. Does it change because of COVID-19, et cetera, with Hunter Milborne, who runs a consulting company. Hunter, what's the name of your consulting company? It's Milborne?
Yeah, Milborne Real Estate Inc. So we're actually a licensed real estate broker. So, we give advice to developers and help them plan their new condominium developments or master plan communities, and then execute the sales programs for them. But it's a long cycle. It's a long cycle because, you've got a year or two in planning, then you've got sales, and then you've got 3 or 4 years of building. So from the beginning to the end takes a long time.
I can imagine. I heard that there were 2 different sales strategies. One that was sort of a big push and you sold 50 to 70 units in the first month. And another one was like a trickle out. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, most, there's always the golden rule, and whoever has the gold makes the rules. So one of the things that's influenced our industry is the policy of construction lenders. So typically, most of these pre-construction condos, whether they're $500,000, $700,000, $900,000, I mean, that's kind of the range of most of them. So when someone purchased them today, they would usually pay a 15 or 20% deposit, in kind of 5% increments over a period of a year or a year and a half. So it's also an easier way to buy something than it is to buy a resale condominium and close on it in 30, 60, or 90 days, because you've got time to put your deposit together and you've got time to figure out closing and mortgage approvals and things. So it's a little bit of a gentler process. But I mean, usually what happens is that before the bank will give a construction financing to a developer, they usually want the building in the range of 60 to 75% sold, so that, it's justified that it's, would be able to sustain a construction loan. So some developers will say, our goal is to sell 100% of the building as quick as we can. Others would say, let's sell enough to get started, and then we'll sell the rest as we go along over the next 2-3 years.
Because one would think that, as you're selling over time, you get some appreciation, you can get more money for your condos.
Yeah, and listen, like I said, some developers that's why there's been a strong demand for people to purchase a pre-construction condos, because if you just do some very simple math, is let's say your average deposit is 15%, so on a $600,000 unit, it'd be $90,000. So if I was to say to you, Brian, you understand real estate. I mean, what over the next 4 years in Toronto, what would you guess to be a very safe and conservative average rate of appreciation for the real estate?
Gosh, I don't know, 2 to 5%.
Yeah, so let's take 3%, right, as the lower end of that spectrum. So if you have something that's $600,000, 3% would be 18,000. So if it's over 4 years, that's 72,000. That it would appreciate from when you bought it until when you got delivery, and your deposit is 90,000. So if you think of what the return is on your deposit from the asset price, it's a big difference. It's a big return, right? So that's why it's very attractive to people. And, in some cases, there's no guarantee that appreciation is going to continue. But, Toronto took a big hit this year because immigration didn't come. A lot of students didn't come. There was things that really logically you would have thought would have really hurt this market, but the market stayed very strong. So, when immigration returns and the federal government has come out and said, we're going to up our immigration from 260 to 280,000 people per year to 400,000 people a year for the next 3 years, 1,200,000, and students will come back. So those things are going to be a little shot in the arm to the real estate industry too, whether it's single family homes, townhomes, or condominiums. So there's a lot of good reasons why I believe that demand will stay strong and things will continue to appreciate. So if you do that math, and people are saying, well, I'd rather buy a home than invest in the stock market. I need a home. I'd rather buy than I'd rather rent, because I believe in this Toronto market that it's going to keep appreciating.
Well, you give a good justification for why people should be buying pre-construction condos. That's interesting. Is this happening in 416 and 905?
Yeah, increasingly. As a matter of fact, 2020 was the first year ever that not the total dollar volume, but the number of units was actually sold more units in 905 than in 416 of pre-construction.
Really? That's fascinating. And what
So
about outside of the 905? Is it happening there too?
Yeah, I think what if you go into 519 and 705, I mean, we have got a couple of projects that we're doing. One is an apartment condo. It's 5 stories, about 60 suites. That's on the market now in Huntsville called Lakeside. We've got one coming up, which is more of a townhouse style. They're on Ferry Lake, just outside of the town of Huntsville. But markets like Collingwood and Barrie, like those 705 markets are very strong as well. And it's based on that same theory that, if I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment downtown, I could probably have sold it and, bought a house, maybe not in 905, but certainly in 705. And if it's not so critical that I go to my office every day, then maybe that's okay. Right?
These condos in Huntsville or Collingwood, what are they looking like in size and amenities and stuff like that?
Yeah, the ones in Collingwood. We have a project in Collingwood. It's called the Georgian Bay Club, and they're like duplexes. So they're big homes. They're I guess how big are those? They're about 4,000 square feet.
That's
and
big.
They're $2 to $2.5 million. Now there's affordable ones there too, but that one is just a very high end community. In Huntsville, they're ranging from about 500,000 up to about $1.2 million in this little 60-unit building called Lakeside. And the other one that's more townhouses, they're kind of about 1,100 to 1,800 square feet, and they'll be probably around 600,000 to $1 million. So if you compare that to the price of a cottage or a lakefront property that's a single family, it's obviously much more affordable.
Right, no question. So in a lot of these condos, I've seen floor to ceiling windows. Is that the trend?
Yeah, listen, I think that, when people are in a building, whether it's, we always say that the three things that people really like are location, brand, and view, not necessarily in that order. So if you have a big wall-to-wall, floor-to-ceiling window, whether you're on a low floor or high floor, can make your views nicer. And your neighborhood is important, and your whoever, the sponsorship is important.
So location, brand, and view. So brand is who the builder is?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. Location, brand, and view. And what are the other things? So, you always see these, big, gorgeous kitchens that are attached to a living room. So it's like the great room type of attitude. You don't have separate kitchens and separate living areas.
Listen, there's been a trend over the last several years that those kitchen, living room, dining room areas have kind of gotten a lot more open rather than closed-in kitchen, closed-in dining room, closed-in living room. Just because it feels, as spaces got smaller, it's just kept it more open.
And that open concept, you think, is going to continue?
I think so, yeah, because as again, with smaller units, if you have a lot of small little rooms, it feels too cut off, right? And this way, it's much more open. You open your front door and you see your kitchen, living room, dining room, and probably a view right out through the floor to ceiling, wall to wall glass windows. Right?
Then I've seen some dens that, frankly, I think they're almost like pantry closets. They're hardly dens at all.
Yeah, I mean, again, as your suites get smaller, I mean, to have that separate little space, though, to work from home is important for a lot of people. Right?
And you don't need a window. You can just have a little den off of the front hallway.
Yeah, that's typically, they're usually towards the corner of the building as opposed to towards the window.
Right. Okay. So it's an interesting development, as I guess what you're saying is that you think COVID has impacted where people want to live as they moved out of the core into the suburbs. But long term, you don't think it's going to actually impact the style of building that we're building or that you're advising people to build. And then you think people are going to go back downtown as soon as COVID's done and we got our vaccinations.
Yeah, but I think that there's also, a lot of people that probably were downtown that have dispersed that aren't going to go back, So I think you're going to see these trends kind of overlapping, right?
Okay. The other thing that's sort of been happening is townhouse developments. And I've had a couple of people on my show that have talked about how that's, something that is restricted by way of zoning, but is really the solution for affordable housing. And they call it the missing middle or something like that. But they want, more townhouses, more stacked townhomes, laneway developments and things like that. What do you think is going to happen there? Is it going to be tall 300 to 400 unit condos, or are we going to see, smaller townhouse developments?
I think you're going to see more of everything. I mean, we have a community that Mattamy is the developer, and Mattamy is one of the biggest builders in North America. They sell about 7,000 homes per year, and they have a site up in Downsview, and it's there's one grouping around 40 suites and the other around 40 that are stacked townhouses and street townhouses. So the street towns are kind of in the 800,000 to $1 million range, and the stacked townhouses are sort of around 650 to 850. So they're kind of priced not too much different than condominiums, but you get a little bit more space because they're 3-4 story buildings as opposed to tall buildings, with
right.
no corridors.
What's the difference between a stacked and a street townhouse?
Well, street townhouse is really just the townhouses in a row, and a stack, whereas you have a 2-story unit kind of on top of a 2-story unit.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. And you think that's going to continue? I've seen some of those townhouses with gorgeous, rooftop patios and spectacular views and things like that.
Yeah. Typically what happens is that, on your street towns, you've got a little backyard or a private area in the front. And then on the stacks, you've got a ground floor unit that has a patio, and then a second floor, third floor, fourth floor unit that would have a roof terrace.
In Port Credit, there's been a trend to these back-to-back townhomes that they take out some old homes and put in townhomes back-to-back with even parking below.
That's right. A lot of these would have, one level of underground parking, or the street towns would be on. I mean, we have a little project, and it's funny. It's kind of a cute little name. It's on a street called Blue Goose, and it's literally across the street from the Mimico GO station. So it's on the south side, and it's not a big community. It's 12 townhomes, and they're not inexpensive because of where it is. It's in the city, and they're quite large. They're between 1,500 and 2,000 square feet, but they're priced kind of like $1.3 million to $1.4 million. So for a home, a home that's pretty much separate without elevators or corridors, they're freehold townhomes. Those are very popular, and that just started selling. And I think that you'll see a lot of the stacked townhouses are going to be a product, because if you think of dense, if you think of an acre of land, you could probably build, 6 to 10 single family homes, depending on the lot size.
Yep.
You can build probably 15 to 20 street towns. And you could build, 25 to 35 stacks, and maybe 45 to 50 back to back. So that's kind of like the food chain of single families to backs, right? And now
200 condos.
Yeah, so now if you go downtown, I mean, we've got a project we're doing for Great Gulf, which is at Cumberland and Yonge. So the lot size is 50 by 100. It's 100 by 150. So it's 15,000 square feet, which is a big house lot or 2 house lots.
Yeah.
But it's a 51-story building with 400 units. So that's, not in the acre example where an acre is like 43,000 square feet. Yeah. That's about a third of an acre. It's about 15,000 square feet. So that's, where your densities start to come into play, right?
So, it's interesting. I had Jennifer Keesmaat on my show, and she was saying that a lot of surveys say that people want to live in the communities that are like 20 to 40 units per acre. That typical suburbia, as you say, is like 6 units per acre or less. And condos are 100 units per acre or more. But that if you take a look at Bloor West Village or Port Credit or the beaches or Kitsilano or, other areas around North America, they're in that 20 to 40 units per acre, which I guess is what you described as street towns. Is that what you think people really want to live in those villages?
Well, listen, I think other things being equal, they'd probably rather have a single family house with a backyard, which, has never been our claim to fame. But the thing is, again, what they want and what they can afford might be 2 different things, because, the average price of a single family home in the city is significant. And one thing I think we talked about it the last time I was chatting with you is that, is the Greenbelt legislation, which, came into law in 2005. So all of a sudden, 1,600,000 acres is frozen for development around its GTA, and it really kind of choked off the supply of single family homes. So, in 2005, you could buy a nice single family home for 500,000. And by 2015, the same home was 1.3 million. So, what it did was it really gave a big shot in the arm to the condo market, because the condo market became, the real entry-level form of housing for people, right?
We're chatting tonight with Hunter Milborne about, the condominium business and real estate and housing and what's going to happen. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're having an interesting chat with Hunter Milborne of Milborne. What was the name of the company again? Milborne Real Estate?
Yes. Thank you, Brian. Yeah.
Milborne Real Estate, and it's a licensed broker as well as a consulting company that consultants condominium developers on what they should be building. Hunter, are we building enough product?
It's interesting. Our government housing agency, Central Mortgage and Housing, CMHC, has come out with study after study over the years and said that the GTA, Greater Toronto Area and its environs, needs 50 to 55,000 new homes per year to stay balanced, where you're going to have modest appreciation, 2-3% a year, like with inflation. And what we've been getting for the last 15 or 20 years is around 40 to 45,000 new homes per year. So if you really take a big 30,000 foot view of those macro numbers, it's not too hard to. You don't have to be an economist or an actuarial scientist to figure out, well, if the city and region needs 50 to 55,000 homes per year, and it's only getting 40 to 45,000, you've got this disequilibrium between the supply and
demand imbalance.
Then if you couple that with the Greenbelt, so pre-2005, pre-Greenbelt, 2/3 of those new homes were low-rise, single-family in towns, and 1/3 were condominium. And by 2015, 10 years later, the industry had completely flipped, and it was 2/3 condominiums and 1/3 low-rise. So the low-rise homes are appreciating faster, just simply because there's fewer and fewer of them, but the entry level position to get there is higher. So what people have realized is that if I want to be a first time buyer or buy an investment property, I'm better off buying a condominium 5, 6, 7, 800,000, because that's not going to buy me a house anywhere near Toronto, probably. Right?
What's your vision for Toronto? You've talked about how we're going to have a whole bunch of immigration. You've talked about this supply demand imbalance. What that would suggest is that we're going to have, appreciation such that it's going to be almost impossible for people to afford a place in the city of Toronto.
Listen, I think, regrettably, when projects take, it used to take in the city of Toronto 18 months to get a project approved, and today that time is more than double. So when a developer has to carry land, and the cities and the province are all saying, well, we want to have more affordable housing. I mean, one way to make things more affordable is to speed up the approvals and increase the supply. But so many times you hear stories of things taking years and years and years to get approved. So, unfortunately, I mean, if you go to a much more mature society like Europe, there's a divide between people who own and people who don't own. So, unless the governments do something to accelerate the supply and have more affordable stuff, it's going to be an ever increasing difficulty for people to buy, or they're going to have to move further out because prices are going up, right?
The province has been talking about proposed highway 413, a new ring 400 series highway around at least the western part of the GTA. You talk about us having to move farther out. Do you think that highway makes sense?
I do. It's interesting. Maybe a lot of younger people might not realize, but Highway 401 was originally built as a city bypass.
And now it's the center of the city.
Right. Yeah. Then 407 came. So now it'll be 413. Right. So I remember when Canada's Wonderland was built, everybody laughed because they said it was in the middle of nowhere. Now it's in the middle of everywhere. So, 25, 30 years makes a big difference. We've been in business, it'll be 45 years this June. So, fortunately, we have a lot of younger people in the company than me. But, when we started to sell condominiums in the mid 70s here, they were like people I mentioned, they were like the mid-market product was $60 a square foot, and the most expensive dollars projects were $100 a square foot.
And now we're talking about what, 1,000?
Well, 1,000 is baseline. I mean, the expensive one in Rosedale I mentioned is 2,500
a square
foot. So anyway, it's I guess we also have an old saying: you can't outsave real estate. So if you're thinking of buying, then it's probably better to buy something sooner rather than later and not overanalyze. That would be my advice.
You can't outsave real estate. Good words to end on. Hunter Milborne, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us.
Thanks, Brian. Always a pleasure.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. You heard it from Hunter Milborne. Invest in some real estate. Good night, everybody.